Okay, 93.
93.
So we just finished up shipping out the pre-orders of our new book, The Joy of Dissolution, by you, Christopher Reed Johnson, me, Erica Johnson, and J. Edward Cornelius, the late J. Edward Cornelius. And somebody asked us a question about our book. We are essentially presenting this as this is one of the few, if not, well, I shouldn't say the only, because I don't know all of what's out there, but one of the very few books about for the advanced practitioner. And then the question is, how so? Why is this an advanced book for thelemic practitioners? So that was what we wanted to address.
Right.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about our conversation as far as that goes?
I guess only that it has to do with the path of on from the in point of view, for the most part, from the right side of the tree, going up, as opposed to ego solidification being ego dissolution. So it is for advanced, but at the same time, it's very informative, I think, for everybody. It's nice to know what to look ahead towards, you know, and what's in store for you, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, whether or not you end up doing it this incarnation or another one, right? Because I mean, we can come back and shore up the beginning parts of this many a time, so it doesn't have to be, but it's still nice to know, especially for those who might be doing it this incarnation. Jerry, you know, frequently quotes, I don't know if it's actually a quote or what, but Grady is saying there's really just two steps to take on the path, and in a sense, the first step could be the O of on, the on formula, and the second one could be N, which is mainly what we're addressing. Is
Right, the angel in the abyss.
Yeah. So kind of just, he says, bringing up one's libidinous energy up to the heart center. That's like the first step, and then the second one is crossing the abyss in effect. So in a lot of ways, what we're talking about are the necessary prerequisites for crossing the abyss, although we don't always put it that way. But I just thought I'd throw that in there for another map for, you know, how simple it really is in a lot of ways. It's just two steps, and we're talking more about the second step.
Right, right. And so, yeah, that's why we, I think, introduce a lot of meditation into there, because it's one of the few ways that you can actually affect your actions and reactions and be able to observe them objectively, and to calm the mind enough in order to not have the imposition of the I all the time, and also like the chattering mind, as they call it, which can be a big barrier, as well as while you're in the process of ego dissolution, all of your phantoms are going to come up and bite you in the ass. So, for sure.
So maybe would it be okay if we spent like 5 minutes talking about the first step, you know, sort of like leading up to the O, and then the O, and then kind of talk about what we do talk about in the book?
Sure.
So, you know, just to, you know, put it simply, you know, before the preparatory to the first step is the Man of Earth degree in AA, which is just essentially studying the book of the law, figuring out how it applies to one's own incarnation, you know, and then living it. So kind of living as an actual Thelemite, you know, doing your will, not imposing your will on other people, not allowing them to impose their will on you, distinguishing between will and want, even at that stage, because sometimes what you want is not what you will. You know, it's basically trying to understand what, in a very basic way, what this whole thing is about, which is how are you channeling the will of God. An event, you know, because really that's the whole thing the whole time. It's like there's one will, but it comes through your incarnation in a specific way. Only you can provide that for the world. And initially, you're just trying to figure out how to get rid of the big, you know, restrictions, maybe their morality restrictions from other people or yourself, hang-ups that you may have.
Yeah, from society, religion, and all the other sources that try to hold you down. These entanglements we get ourselves involved in, word webs I like to call them. You know, try to extricate ourselves from those in order to allow the will to pass through unfettered, you know, like purely. So you have to really, I think, in order to do this process, not everybody can, and not at least in this incarnation. You know, everybody's becoming Buddha, right? But in order to receive that energy and not get burnt out or go crazy, or there's all kinds of dangers. You walk a razor's edge, I think, in the end. And so the purification of the mind is very important, and hence the Vipassana. But yeah, so to channel that, yes, you have to learn how to live thelemically, but then you also have to, and build up the ego, because it has to be strong enough to withstand the influx of all these energies once you start to climb higher on the tree and the weight gets heavier and heavier, the backpack gets heavier and heavier. So
Yeah, and I guess just to follow on that thought and sort of completing the pretty much all I wanted to say about the O section of it, or something, the outer adept, is just basically cleaning the mind. Has to do also in Hod with essentially going through and kind of getting rid of your own phantoms and false beliefs, or at least understanding that they are false if you're going to use them or hang on to them or something. Learning, really trying to learn enough Kabbalah that you can kind of see everything as a reflection of the inner mind, so that it's not just random thoughts that are disconnected, because that type of imbalance can easily knock you down. And then on the Nitzach
And the
side,
circularity of language too. It's like a dictionary. You're trying to find the first definition or something. Yeah.
And then, like, I guess in Nitzach, just learning devotion, learning bhakti yoga, which is really important and very huge, because just beginning to recognize that everything you see is a face of your inner God. That's like, trying and responding accordingly. So, because it's so easy to project one's own fears and phantoms on somebody else and get angry or get afraid, or whatever it is, get defensive, that kind of thing. And that's the beginning of the outer adept, is kind of learning, okay, this is how I shine my light. This is kind of like what it looks like on earth from the perspective of my son, hopefully somewhat balanced at this point. And that would be a perfectly respectable place to end your incarnations. Just with that, that's the outer adept, that's the O.
Why do you think Jerry says that Netzach is the place where most people fail?
Well, okay, I can answer that from a couple standpoints, but I think especially for men, and at this point, most of the people who join the AA are men for a start, but even for women, I think it's really hard to see beyond our own incarnation. It seems like we're trained from birth in this society to sort of be every man for himself, every woman for herself. Everybody's it's all about me, I. What do you want? Trying to being sold stuff in commercials even when you're like 3 or something like that. So it's really hard to take that type of weight of training. Like, every last thing has been kind of geared toward, not everything, but all, so much of our training is geared around I, and this idea of the separate I as if it were real. Whereas in reality, like, that's what we kind of figure out as we go through this process, is that actually everything is connected. There's really just one I, in a sense. It's just, we're just different organs of the body of God, or whatever, however you want to put that. But
in movement.
In movement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If you were able to pause and then take all of the things collectively and put them together, you'd have God, but it's always in movement.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Which is the interesting thing. It kind of solves a lot of philosophical dilemmas if you think about it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we are in movement, and sometimes it's very confusing. It seems like we're alone, and it's hard. I think it's just really hard at this stage of, our rationalistic journey as a culture. We've kind of come through science, and now we're kind of been geared toward the idea that, like, science will tell us everything there is and all that exists that can be told by it. And by that, and I think it's good in the one sense to be a little bit skeptical and to be a little bit, we don't want to become superstitious, so that's a good side of that. But the bad side is that if we can't believe in or invest in, or before we can understand, perhaps, but maybe we can understand that we're part of something much larger than this little organ, this I. If we can't do that, we're basically constantly going to fall down right there at Nitzach. Like, that's definitely.
Or even before then. I mean, it seems like everybody's very disconnected. The thing that the church at least did provide was a place to gather on Sundays, whether or not you had any real faith in the church. It was like a gathering place for people to get together. And now it's this digital realities, and TV is like bombarding us, and to have all this crap that they try to sell us, we have to work more and harder and have less time, and the cry for myth, it's been lost. Something has been lost. Something essential has been lost, I think.
Yeah.
And that does not require that you believe in any particular god or goddess per se. It's just that there is something greater, than your measly temple that you happen to occupy at the moment, right? That's going to deteriorate and waste away and die, and
Yeah, all these things are transitory. For whatever reason, listening to you talk about that, sort of understanding there's something bigger, that reminds me of the two different stages that we reach. Hopefully in Malkuth, ideally we get some little flicker or notion of the bigger something, which is really just that higher part of ourselves, or perhaps the angelic divine part of ourselves, that we get a notion that it exists. So that might not be very specific at that point, but at least it gives us a little bit of hope to go on or something, because some experience happens in the sphere of Malkuth if all goes well in the AA, and then you can keep moving on. And then if you do get do start to work with bhakti and devotion, as well as trying to have a balanced mind in Hod, then we can hopefully attain the guidance of the guardian angel, the holy guardian angel, which again is like a
There's
divine.
all relates to the Granthis too,
Yeah. So then we can, which is definitely something. It's definitely other than the ego, that's for sure, because it definitely has information that your ego doesn't have. So I mean, if anybody experiences guidance like that, what used to be called knowledge and conversation, you know a lot about what you're supposed to be doing, and it definitely seems like it's coming from somewhere else. Even though you could say in a large sense it's all I, because we're all God or whatever, but as long as you understand, so I don't know, I just thought that just popped into my head when you were talking.
It seems like you're like Alice entering into Wonderland, and everything the world starts speaking to you. So not only is it in your intuition that's guiding you, it's like the world itself is sending you messages constantly, and it's hard to tell the difference of whether or not that was happening before you started the journey, because you really either blocked it out or didn't recognize it as such. But regardless, I had to get my grammar right. Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon when things start talking, like license plates or even commercials, or just the things like, why is this happening right now to me? Is very important, and we've had things that people probably wouldn't believe. It'd be nice to make like a book of them, but I don't think people would buy it. Like, these people are crazy. So, yeah,
it gets to the point where you're basically ready to switch to the inner adept. I mean, there's a lot more. I mean, we're not going to be able, even this video, we're not going to be able to go into everything, because there's sort of layers of purification that have to happen in order for those messages. If there's anything imbalanced, then what's the person going to do? It's like, I'm the incarnation of Anubis, and it's like I'm being talked to and I'm leading the world. I mean, there's all kinds of ego inflation that can happen if you're not really pure. But let's say you've done all the correct rituals and the correct purifications, and we could talk more about that if you'd like to. But and then you're ready to move to that end stage of as an ON, the path of death. At that point, you're basically, Jerry used to point out a lot that like the magical grades switch. So like whereas it's
circle and the square.
Yeah, circle and the square. So it's like I always get confused as to which is which, but like 1 = 10 is the neophyte degree, right?
And 10 = 1.
10 = 1 is the Sisyphus, at the very other end of the path there.
Yeah, actually, the circle and square is just the numbers, right?
Yeah. But the idea being like the reason they switch is that you basically are taking what you have. Your soul, your body, your mind, and you're simply allowing them to receive from above the abyss, or you're beginning to set that in place. And like so for example, just to continue what you're talking about, the messages that you receive are much more, they're robust and they're constant, and you can easily do it. You're receiving downward. I mean, it's not that you're gonna go up and fly with the angels or something like that, as you can't really, consciousness can't arise above Tiferet. That was his point.
Right. It's not that you've crossed the abyss, it's something crosses the abyss into you.
Yeah, you become like the vessel, you become the grail for
that's why the men are women in the AA, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For God. So
yeah, and I think that's really important, because a lot of people have like, oh, I went into I don't know, I went to Binah and I saw Babylon and I did this and that, and it's like, no, you didn't. That's not even Kabbalistically, if you study it, that's not possible. You may be fooling yourself. So it's really critical to understand that there's basically this is our vehicle, like a radio for receiving and stuff, and it can be as pure as your mind is pure, and that's why we do meditation. We're recommending Vipassana to everybody because we feel that's the best, and we kind of go into that in the book as to why. But
right.
But yeah, if your mind's not pure, then you're just going to receive egotistically based nonsense, essentially.
It's going to reflect, the vibrations are going to sync up with the similar vibrations in the universe and bring it right back to you. It's the empty room, like Doth is the empty room, and we're filling it up with these objects and these people. And so whoever's attracted to me is a reflection of myself. Whatever irritates me about them or about the situation is just something about myself that I don't like. It's like Freud said, when we're younger, we like to eat with everything that we love and shit everything out that we don't. So you've got to learn how to take both and integrate it and balance it, and
Yeah.
hopefully you come out on the other side of Chapel Perilous sane.